Large crowds are following Jesus. He's doing pretty well. Might be a good time to encourage the folks who have decided to walk with him. But instead, he says, whoever comes to me and does not hate father and mother, spouse and children, brothers and sisters, yes, and even life itself, cannot be my disciple. Sounds like a pretty good way to thin out the crowd. This sounds rather harsh, even shocking to us. But consider this reading, which many of you had read at your wedding. A man shall leave his father and mother and cling to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Anytime we start something new, it means, by necessity, that we have to let go of something else. Last week, the staff listened to a presentation on navigating transition. The speaker's point was that although we like change, we don't do transitions very well at all. All beginnings mean letting go of something. I remember when we were planning to build the new church, we worried about what would happen to us when we moved into this new house. So we need rituals to help us manage the transitions. We call them sacraments. A wedding is a wonderful celebration, but is it just as much a funeral for what we are losing? Perhaps we should offer newlyweds our sympathy. They have to let go of being single, which, if you think about it, it's all the life they have known up to this point. As exciting as it is to start preschool, it also means being away from mom and giving up that one-on-one time with her. The children of Israel had been out of Egypt for 2 whole verses before they were ready to turn back. If we're not ready to give up whatever is demanded of us on the journey, we might as well turn back now. On the train to Darjeeling, Mother Teresa heard the call within the call. She had been working as a sister of Loretta in Calcutta, first as a teacher and later as principal of the school. It was a boarding school for wealthy children. When she heard this call on the train, she heard it that she was to leave the closed wall of the school campus and to work with, as she called it, the poorest of the poor in the slums of Calcutta. So Mother Teresa founded a new community, the Missionaries of Charity. But the hardest part, she said, was leaving the Sisters of Loretta. It was harder than leaving home at the age of 18. Jesus says, whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple. The invitation to take up our cross is an invitation to enter into the Paschal mystery, into the dying and rising of Jesus, giving up in order to receive. We see this detailed wonderfully in Paul's letter to Philemon. Most of the writings of Paul, in fact, all the other writings, are public letters, but this is the only personal letter that we have in Paul's writing. It's about a slave named Onesimus who had somehow become connected to Paul and was baptized a Christian. As Paul writes, I'm appealing to you for my child, Onesimus, whose father I have become during my imprisonment. I think it's important to note here that Paul does not speak out against the institution of slavery. In fact, it was many years into the modern era before we began to see slavery as against the will of God. So the Bible doesn't talk about the opposition to slavery. In fact, for Paul to have done so would have been an act of treason because slavery was the law of the empire. So Paul doesn't go there. He doesn't make that argument. Some people have criticized Mother Teresa because, unlike the American servant of God, Dorothy Day, Mother Teresa never used her influence to try to change the social conditions that kept people dying in the streets of Calcutta. But in truth, saints are like the rest of us. They're not perfect, but they do excel in the one thing. For Pope Francis, Mother Teresa put into action his ideal of the church as a merciful field hospital for the poorest of the poor. By canonizing her during his Jubilee year of mercy, he's in some ways making her the icon of his entire pontificate. But no matter how you or I answer the call to take up our cross, it always means giving up our possessing. So Paul, in urging Philemon to set Onesimus free, is appealing to mercy. For Philemon, this would be an economic loss. But here is Paul's argument. So that you might have him back forever, no longer as a slave, but more than a slave, a beloved brother. Onesimus the slave dies, and Onesimus the Christian free man is born. In the Gospel of John, when Jesus is preparing his disciples at the Last Supper for his death and resurrection, he says, "It is for your own good that I go away, because unless I go, you will not receive the Holy Spirit, the Paraclete." This is like a young man or woman going off to college or off to make their way in the world. They say to their parents pretty much the same thing Jesus said to his disciples. "Mom, Dad, it's better for you if I go away, because unless I go, I will always remain your child, son or daughter. But if I go, I will come back to you, no longer your child, but as an adult, bringing with me children whom you can welcome as your grandchildren." I often say that mothers give birth to their children not once, but twice. Once as an infant, and second as adults. This doesn't make the loss any easier, but this is what paschal dying looks like. Dying in order to rise again. Perhaps another metaphor will help make this clear. According to the ancient theory of art, the practice of sculpting has less to do with fashioning a figure of one's choosing than with being able to see in the stone the figure waiting to be liberated. The sculptor imposes nothing, but only frees what is held captive in stone. Discipleship is something like this. It does not work by means of addition or acquisition, but by release, of prying loose, of letting go of the need to have our life circumstances be a certain way in order for us to live or pray or be deeply happy. With enough of this stone removed, we begin to see a figure rising out of the stone. The emerging figure is our life as Christ.